Hello and welcome to the Unfiltered Alternative podcast. This podcast is about looking at different perspectives, faith and current events. My name is Brandon and I'll be your host tonight. And joining me will be my good friend, the Professor, Mr. J. Hey buddy, how you doing?
Hey, yeah, good. And excited to do this.
We've had a few difficulties so far to get this on the road, but thank God Zoom is working for us.
Yep. Thank God for Zoom. I'm excited.
Thank God for Zoom. So on tonight's episode, we're going to discuss something that's been in the media for probably a couple of weeks now about the scandal out of Hillsong. It's been something, I guess, it's been brewing for some time now. I wanted to get on it and give our take. So, Jay, when you heard the story on 60 Minutes a couple of weeks ago called Hillsong's Hell, or words to that effect, what was your initial reaction to that?
Well, I wasn't that surprised. Hillsong has had a number of issues raised in the past, a number of allegations against them over the years that keeps popping up on the news, keeps popping up in the media. This is another bunch of allegations that's popped up on the news recently. So not too surprised, but yeah, it's very interesting. Hillsong is Australia's largest church, and they tend to come under fire quite a lot for a lot of the things they do and a lot of things that happen to them within their church too. So, yeah, another interesting thing to talk about.
Yeah, they're definitely. Would you classify them as a mega church in Melbourne or around the world? You'd classify them that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, definitely. Hillsong is Australia's largest church. It's a Pentecostal church. I think, I'm not sure the exact numbers, but I think it's got something like 40,000 members worldwide.
Wow.
Australia's largest church. Founded in Sydney by Frank Houston, the father of, Brian Houston.
That's right.
It started off as Christian Life Centre, I think, in the late 70s, and then later on merged into Hillsong, into the church we know today. And over the years, it just kept growing and growing.
I think from what I remember seeing on that interview was that it had been gone for about 38 years, if memory serves me correctly. So It's been around for a fair while.
Yep. Yeah, it'd been around for a while. Started off as a small, humble church, and then kept growing and growing. I think at one stage they rented out the town hall in Sydney. That holds around 2,000 people. And then they outgrew that, and so they had to find a new place to build the church they have today, I think in the Bocken Hills area, where they have a auditorium of, I think, around 10,000 seats, around 10,000 people. And so, it's a very big mega church, Pentecostal church, and it keeps growing. It's very popular, and especially amongst young people.
Yeah, they very much have that sort of new school, sort of trendy, sort of rock star sort of vibe about them, with Justin Bieber and Selena Gomez as being part of their congregation. So I kind of feel like at times it's almost like trying to promote a lifestyle. They're trying to sell me this lifestyle that if I've got Jesus, I can have everything I want. I can look great. I can get the great girls. I can look amazing. I've got this, all my wildest dreams are all going to come true. And, just say the word and, I'm walking on sunshine kind of thing. And, the four walls of the church are the happy place that I go to, and everything else around that's all evil and doom and gloom and, all that sort of jazz.
Yeah, well, Hillsong definitely has an image. and they definitely portray and want a certain type of image that they want to portray, and it appeals to young people. They definitely use music to attract people. They're very famous for their music. They sell thousands of albums, Christian music every year. So yeah, they definitely portray this sort of young hipster image in hope to attract large audiences to their church. And by doing that, they also attract celebrities, like you mentioned, Justin Bieber. I think the Kardashians have come to Hillsong Church as well.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a very, some churches are very doctrine driven. Some churches are very Bible based driven, very strict, conservative. Hillsong, they're very image driven. They want this very perfect image that is very appealing to young people. And like you said,
all that prosperity preaching stuff, isn't it?
It is. It leans into prosperity gospel type doctrine, type beliefs. The whole, I think it's very Pentecostal in that sort of prosperity sense. In Pentecostalism, part of their theology, part of their drive is if you believe in Jesus and you join the church and you're part of the Christian movement, you'll be blessed and you'll have a fruitful life. You'll have a fruitful life in your business, in your relationships, in your wealth, in your finances. It's a very Pentecostal thing to believe. Once you're part of the faith, once you're part of the Pentecostal faith, you'll be blessed with prosperity. And yeah, definitely, Hillsong definitely uses that belief and that image. They sell the image of prosperity and glamour and everything is good. They barely talk about the difficult part of the faith, the struggles in the faith. They barely look at those things, and they always promote the glamorous, the prosperous, the wealth side of things, and that's appealing to young people.
Yeah, especially when you're in the prime of your life, and I feel like they want to hook you in early, and sell you all the dreams of the loud music, which is not very dissimilar to what you'd get on the radio. And then like I said before, when you've got all the attractive young people, and we're all hanging out in groups, and you're having the time of your life, and then all this sort of stuff. It's definitely a lure to get you in there for sure.
Oh, it is. It is the biggest. Every generation, the church has a different flavor, and this generation, the last 20 years or so, has been driven by this kind of prosperous, image-driven type of Christianity, which is very big in Hillsong, which is very big in the Pentecostal movement. And it attracts young people, especially young people. And so with the latest allegations at Hillsong, there's two allegations of two young women that believe they were sexually assaulted within Hillsong, within the church, by Hillsong leaders. And what the report says in 60 Minutes, we're going on the report, is that they told other members in Hillsong, they told other leaders in Hillsong, and it was kind of just shrugged aside and swept under the rug. Hillsong as an organization didn't want any part of it. So what does that say about looking after your flock, about loving your neighbor, about caring for those that are in need, that have a real concern? You don't just put it aside and wipe it under the rug. But that seems to be what Hillsong has done in these current allegations, and it seems to be a kind of cultural thing that they've done a number of times over the years. when problems come up, Hillsong seems to put a blind eye to it and sort of sweep it under the rug.
Why,
It happens over and over.
why do you think these things keep on occurring? Like, I can remember, like, obviously I grew up with different, I didn't really get into the Hillsong sort of stuff, but there's always like scandals and weird stuff that goes on. I don't know if it's a human thing, and it gets, people say, oh, Christians should be better, and that sort of thing comes up. It's sometimes, like, with Christian stuff, you'd think that they're sort of held at a higher accountability. We expect people to behave a better way, but unfortunately, I think, sometimes if you're a bad person outside the church, you're going to be a bad person in the church. It doesn't matter what you were or what you are, you're going to be the same on both sides of the fence there, sort of thing. Like, church was always, for me, was always supposed to be a place where you're meant to go in when you're broken and wounded and go to the hospital. Church was meant to be like a hospital, and you go in there and get patched up and become the better version of yourself. But maybe, I don't know, for some people, they don't have that experience of change. They still bring their old baggage and their old selves with them,
Yep. Well, Christians are supposed to be the light of the world. We're supposed to set an example of a different way of living, a high standard of living, of promoting goodness, of promoting love your neighbor, promoting care for one another. We're supposed to be the light of the world in that sense, setting an example of how to live, how to be good, how to care for the world, care for one another. And so when you hear allegations of people being mistreated in the church, especially sexually mistreated, and then they're not heard, their cry for help just gets swept under the rug, then there's a real concern there in that church, because the church is meant to be a safe place, is meant to be, like you said, like a hospital where people go to and meant to feel safe. When people go to church and they're feeling in danger because they may be molested or assaulted, then that's definitely, there's something wrong with the church culture there. And that's what's happening right now at Hillsong. These things are coming out.
The worst thing is about it all, where they only take action once the police get involved, and then then they make excuses for people's behaviour. Like, one of the guys there, they said, oh, he drank too much, and he's not a bad guy, and he's not a serial pest or however they described him. Then they basically gave the guy promotion later on, and I'm just going by what was said in the story, but that's so crazy.
Well, yeah, in the 60-minute report, the other leaders were aware that one of their leaders acted inappropriately to one of the females in the congregation. And instead of sort of getting rid of the leader and handling it, they kind of said, oh, this person is a normal person. We all go through these sort of struggles. And then later on, they gave him they elevated him, gave him a higher position in the church. They didn't do, what's that? They're promoting the offender, and the person who was assaulted gets nothing, gets no reassurance. It just makes it worse for them. There's definitely something wrong there in the culture. And I think it's partly to do with the whole mega church structure. When you have so many people, thousands of people, 30,000 people, you're bound to get some of these things happening. You're bound to get people mistreated in the church. But it's how the church leaders, how the church handles the situation is important. And if they don't handle it properly, that's the failure of the church, and they're not doing what the church is meant to be doing. They're not acting Christ-like, caring for one another.
Like, I'll go one step further and say that it doesn't even have to be a mega church where these things can happen. That can happen at your local 200, 300, 400 person church. But I feel like when they've got a situation where the pastors or leadership or whatever, they trust certain people, they become, it's like they become like favorites or in the congregation. They have to do something really, really, really bad to get kicked out.
Yep.
And that's only when they get called out.
Seems like it.
Or what they'll do is they'll just say to that person, Jimmy Bloggs, you can't be part of the Bible study group for a year. Sit it out in disgrace or whatever. Just wait until the little ball's over and then come back in. And as long as you show that you've repented and you're making amends there, then we'll get you back in and all that sort of stuff. And it's, like tonight's sort of a bit more skewed towards the Hillsong, but, it definitely happens at smaller places. It doesn't have to be these huge places.
Oh, it happens in many churches, small and large. As we know, it happens a lot in the Catholic Church. They've had many problems over the years with sexual offences, child molesting allegations in the Catholic Church. I think it's how the church deals with it, and a lot of the time the church doesn't deal with it. They put a blind eye to it and sort of carry on like nothing's happened. And so the victim gets nothing. The victim just feels ashamed, and there's no relief for the victim. Years go by and the church is still hiding it, even though they know they protect their own flock instead of looking after the victim.
So if you're trying to like bring it back to like a pattern of behaviors, what's the crux of the problem, you think, in your opinion? Like, what would you say? Is it because these people are not they're not fully converted? Are they not they're just morally bankrupt? What's the thing there? Like, what is it?
I really feel, and I've been sort of following this over many years because it's been happening in the church forever. And it seems to be happening a lot more these days. I really feel a lot of churches lack mature leadership and humbleness. The church is meant to be humble, meant to be a servant to the world. As Jesus was a servant to people and servant to the disciples, we are supposed to follow that example. But churches today, they're so big and powerful, and there's no real humbleness. There's no real acceptance that, sorry, we were wrong. May we do something to improve the situation? May we change something so it won't happen again? There's none of that. The church doesn't do that. The church often, and I know I'm generalizing, maybe there are some good churches that do the right thing, but many churches, they don't humble themselves. They don't want to fix the situation. They just go on as though nothing's happened. So it lacks being humble. And I think large, hipster, youthful type churches like Hillsong, they lack real mature leadership. Most of their leaders are really young, haven't really had a real sense of what it's like to be a leader, and they don't know how to handle these situations because they're young and they're immature. They're spiritually immature as well. Yeah.
I'd also go as far to say that a lot of it has no substance to it. Back in the day, I used to do marketing, and one of the things, a title that was used is selling people pop and fizz.
Yep.
Which is another way of just saying, just like fairy dust and rainbows and whatever else. When there's no meat behind it, when there's no real anything tangible, Because if you go back and if you look at a lot of these sermons, like the pastor will tell 3 knock-knock jokes, make a couple of stories about, his adventures on the weekend or whatever. He'll just make up something, have a Bible verse there, and then you walk, they send you on your way. And then if I asked you like an hour later, what did you do for 2 hours before? You'd probably go, I don't know, but whatever it did, it made me feel nice and warm and fuzzy, and that's what's going to get me till next week, There's nothing like you go there, the bright lights, the music, the smoke machines, the good-looking girls, the good-looking guys. It's so user-friendly. The whole thing is so user-friendly.
Yeah. There's a model that a lot of Pentecostal churches use, a lot of evangelical churches use. It's called the seeker-friendly model. You can look it up and read about it. The seeker-friendly model. They want to create an atmosphere in church that doesn't scare off people, that doesn't scare off seekers that are seeking for God. If they make it too theological, if they make it too Bible-based, or if they make it too doctrinal-based, they're scared that people will go away. They will never come to church. So so a lot of churches are making church, sugarcoating it with this nice, happy, clappy environment, really nice music, really friendly people, shake your hands when you enter the church, which is great. I like that, I like going to church.
Have an instant coffee after the service.
Sorry?
Have a cupcake and an instant coffee after the service in the prayer room, and we'll give you details.
Come to the.
We'll come and stalk you later on. Exactly.
I don't think there's anything wrong with having a nice environment, and feeling happy in church. I like that. I like some of the music. I like the happy environment. But I think over the years we've replaced church values like being humble, really loving your neighbor, doing church community, helping the community, church values, Christian values. We've replaced that with this sort of image-driven, happy, clappy, environment-driven culture church. And so now we get a lot of churches, particularly the bigger churches, where it's all about the music. It's all about who's going to preach on the weekend. Oh, I like that preacher. He's quite funny. And it lacks real substance. It lacks the real life of a Christian, the real substance of what churches used to be in the past. And it's been replaced by this happy, clappy type of environment. And it's
almost like they haven't got the balance right.
I think so.
If you go too hard with just Bible, people get bored of it. How many times can you revisit the children of Israel and their struggles in the desert? But if you go full the other way, where you're just giving them at the end of the day, really, I believe they don't bring up struggles of life. They don't bring up real issues like people who have they might lose children, they might lose their job, car accident, cancer, whatever it might be. There's nothing like really like down at your level. It's like you've got to rise up to this level, or we've got something here to sell you. Does that make sense?
Well, the church model is like a business model. They're selling a product. They're selling Christ.
Yeah.
And
correct.
The real Christ can be quite offensive to a lot of people, so they have to bubble wrap everything and sweeten it, have nice music to attract people, have friendly and good-looking people at the front door to shake your hands, to bubble wrap it all, sugarcoat it. Because if they don't do that, they're scared that no one will come to church. So in a way, a lot of churches do the bubble coating, the sugar coating, to attract people, and it's all about numbers. It's all about drawing hundreds of people. How many people can we draw to church this year? We'll aim for 5,000. It a lot of it is about numbers. Hillsong is a lot about numbers. Is about how many people they can bring to the church this year. And so when they have that sort of a business model, they go for that sort of a model. They lack a lot of substance in other areas, and so there's an imbalance. And then you get the Hillsong that we know now. We get very immature leaders, and then you get a lot of scandals happen when you replace real, authentic, robust Christianity with image-driven business model Christianity.
I know this is going to be a bit controversial, but I'm going to say it, right? Because this is the unfiltered alternative, right? These churches, it's almost like McDonald's franchises, right? And they're all run by young people. The oldest person there's like 22 years old, 25, whatever.
Yeah.
And they don't have the maturity of the life experience and all that sort of stuff. And I'm going to say like these places are genuinely money-making machines, and it's a big conversion game. Yeah. And I remember, maybe one of these places where they talk about, we made $5 million or $13 million for the building fund, or just ridiculous amounts of money. Or we converted, we gave all these sinners prayer booklets, or we did all this stuff. We converted 50,000 people this year. Like this action. That's right. It's just like, it's like, what are we doing here? Like,
it is.
Are you changing the world? Like, what are you doing? Like, it's empty. It's empty.
It's like you said. It's like a franchise, and it's got a business model. You go to Hillsong, you can go to the gift shop and buy the Hillsong cup, with Hillsong written on it, the Hillsong T-shirt. Same in America. Joel Osteen, for those who don't know him, he's one of the world's most famous preachers. He's got all his merchandise, the Joel Osteen merchandise. You can buy his books, you can buy his cups with his smile on it. It's selling a product. And a lot of it is not selling Christ. It's actually selling the church as a business, selling the Hillsong DVDs and the cups and the T-shirts. It's a model. It's a business.
Well, like, to expand the point, like moving a little bit away from Hillsong, because I don't want to sit here and just bag them, but we can bag other people. No, I'm just joking. Like, look at one of my favorite buddies of all time, Kenneth Copeland, saying that he doesn't want to go in a can full of demons because they're going to come and get him, and he needs $63 million to get a new jet. And
yep.
That is just beyond ridiculous. Or Creflo Dollar, whatever he calls himself, has 2 jets. And how can you convince? Like, it's just amazing how you can convince full grown ass people that the pastor needs to get another jet. The dude needs millions and millions of dollars. Like, man, like the guy's got like a 15 million, or who knows, like how many $1 million, house. And you look in the aisles, and you got single mothers that are struggling to put $2 together.
Yep.
And like, I know that we're sort of getting a bit on a tangent here, but it just is ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
And that's the thing. Like, these numbers they come up with, I feel like they could be like complete false conversions. Really, like, you can say your sinner's prayer and then half an hour go and do whatever. Like, what does that even mean? It doesn't mean anything, right?
That's right.
And then, it's just beyond the joke.
It makes you wonder if Christ came back today, or if he was here today, and he saw these mega churches and the pastors flying in private jets and living in mansions. I wonder what Jesus Christ would say. it's the dead opposite to Jesus, who was a humble carpenter, who mingled with the poor, who was the most average guy. He mingled with fishermen, and very likely he didn't have that much money himself because he was just a carpenter. And everything, a lot of what Jesus taught about was about being humble, being down to earth, reaching out to those that are in need, spiritual need and physical need, meaning the poor people. It's such a weird thing that the church today has gone so opposite to that. You got, like you said, there's all these pastors flying around in private jets, and they're asking their congregation, "Oh, my private jet is getting old. I need a new $60 million jet. It's something Christ would want me to do." I mean, it's so ludicrous, isn't it? It's
outrageous.
You really wonder, how did we get here? From Christianity, the humble beginnings of Christianity, where Christians were being persecuted and they were living very humbly, just eating bread and water, to the pastors living these multi-million-dollar lives and flying around in private jets. It's
Well, in that Hillsong story, they said they're paying the babysitters like $4 an hour.
Wow.
And on the they were saying, one of the girls said on there that they would go to lunch, like they'll go to breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or restaurants, and as long as they said, "Oh, we're going to talk about God" or whatever, however they're going to justify it, that just goes straight on the credit card kind of thing, So it's just,
now, mind
it's
you,
crazy.
There are a lot of, I would say, very reasonable churches out there that are very sensible, have good leadership. I might not agree with a lot of their theology, but I would say they're more in line with the sort of lifestyle Christ is wanting his followers to have. Like, say the Salvation Army is a good example. They're a very humble church. The leaders are well looked after, but they're not multi-millionaires. And the Salvation Army, they're very humble people, and they reach out to the homeless, and that's been their mission. And so the Salvation Army, I would say, is more reflectant of what Christians should be more like than, say, mega churches where the pastors are living in mansions and flying in private jets. Somehow that doesn't look like Christ to me, that sort of image, that sort of church image. It doesn't line up with what Christianity should really be.
But if you asked one of these mega church pastors, they would sit there and say, "The reason why I'm rich is because God blessed me." That's how they'll justify their explanation. God blessed me, not because secretly they had a business model where they don't pay tax and they're a 501c3 church and they're tax exempt. And that's how they're going to say, "Oh, we were blessed in abundance. I did all this hard work. Years ago we used to preach in a shed, and now we've got this, 50,000 capacity stadium or something." That's how they'll say it to you.
I know. And they often quote rich people in the Bible, like King Solomon was rich, God blessed King Solomon. Well,
that's true.
I think a lot of the wealth in churches these days is not because of the blessing that God has given them. It's more their model, their business model that they model their church on. They model their church on the business model with merchandise that makes money, and that's how they become rich.
Or when you do this whole thing about
sell a lot of books and make millions from selling books.
Yeah. What about this whole thing about if you give me $1,000, like they won't word it like that. They'll say if you have how do they word it? Like if you plant a seed of $1,000, the Lord will give you what their heart's desire is. They'll do that. And then they've got this, one of them was a lady. She had the cheek to say something like, "Oh, see, the Lord really blessed me. You know, that's why I've got this big necklace, this huge diamond on my neck. You know, because I pledged $1,000." So she put $1,000 back into her own pocket, and then everyone else gave her 29, 30 grand, whatever. So now she's got this $30,000 necklace. That's how the Lord blessed her.
It's crazy. It's crazy. When you think of it, Jesus Christ, never said anything good about money. He didn't say anything good about money. He tried to stay away from it. If you have money, that's fine. But there's nowhere in the Gospels that is about being and aiming for prosperity, being and aiming to have money. That is a new introduction into the gospel. That's
a Western concept.
It is. It's a very Western concept. It wasn't in early Christianity, and it's sort of grown over the years, and it's become a major thing now in evangelicalism, especially.
I know that we're going to talk about it another time. I'm not going to go into it, but the tithing thing, that deserves its own show. But that, as far as I've heard and I know, that idea is about 150 years old or 100 years old. So all this time in the church, there wasn't any of this giving money stuff. It was more about giving food or however they did it.
Well, tithing is in the Bible, and the principle in the Bible is you tithe what you have, you give to God. Jesus says give 10% is a good model. 10% of what you make, give to the Lord. So it is in the Bible. And the Catholic Church kept tithing down the centuries. But they made it in a way that if you don't tithe, you won't get a blessing, and God is against you. God hates you. So indulgences, exactly. Have a look around at all of the huge Catholic churches around the world, in all the Catholic countries, in South America, in the Philippines, in Italy, in Rome. Huge churches with gold ceilings and marble floors. Where do you think they got all that wealth? They got all that money from people, because the Catholic Church said you got to pay the church, otherwise God won't bless you. You won't get a blessing. Tithing, you know. So the people were forced to give tithing to the church, otherwise they won't get a blessing from God. That was the way they were brainwashed throughout the centuries. Now, in Protestantism, in the modern era, we tithe out of our own will what we want to tithe. The recommendation is 10%, but we tithe out of our own will. But what we have is all these, you know, prosperity gospel preachers, you know, pumping about money all the time. You'll get a blessing from God if you tithe, So that sort of thing is still there, like what the Catholic Church used to do centuries ago, is still there today in a modern sense, you know, in a modern way, done by these televangelists, you know. Send in money now and we'll bless you with a prayer.
Some dude was selling holy water for $50 each or whatever he's selling, I think, in America.
If you go to
and
Jerusalem,
he got busted 2 or 3 times for tax evasion and stuff like that.
If you go to Rome, around the Vatican area, also Jerusalem, certain parts of Jerusalem, in the street corners, people are selling holy water, you know, little bottles of holy water which the priest has blessed, and you buy it and you sprinkle it on yourself, and it brings blessing and wealth to you.
I never forget when I was in Sicily back in 2009. The cars, they're all, you know, like you can't move on the road there, and there was a gypsy lady there. She had like Jesus collector cards.
Yeah.
So like, you know, if you have a Mary, one Mary is worth more than Joseph, but if you got a Mary and a Joseph, it might be equal to a Jesus super card or something, you know.
Yeah. What's
this
Jesus?
Is crazy, man.
The ace card, is he?
Yeah, he's like the ace in the pack. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, that sort of stuff,
I would have loved to have a pack of cards like that.
Get a Mary McKillop card.
Satan on the cards? Is that like
that's a Joker.
Ah, okay. Yeah. He's the Joker.
Whenever you play, you put your demon down and you lose like 3 points or something. I don't know. Just talking crap, but no, but they honestly have stuff like that. But yeah, it's crazy, man, how like they've stretched it out and turned it into this huge business.
Indulgences, and prosperity gospel has been around for centuries, and it's very, very big and popular in churches today. Just go back to Christ himself. Jesus healed people, he blessed people, and he never asked for money. That was one of the main differences between Jesus and other miracle workers. Other miracle workers, which were probably wizards or witches, they would try to heal people and they'll ask for money. Okay, I'll heal your leg if you give me money. The thing that made Jesus different is he never asked for money. Jesus never asked for money. And all the teaching is about being humble. It's trying to get away from worldliness. That belongs to Caesar. It doesn't belong to godliness. Doesn't belong. So it's really strange that we have in the church today, we have all this money stuff, prosperity stuff, when Jesus tried to stay clear of it, and all the blessings that Jesus gave people, he did for free. He never asked for money.
Yeah.
He never said, "Oh, me and my disciples, we need money for our missions, so give us a donation." He never did that. He did everything for free. So I think a lot of churches can really operate without all the millions that they claim they need to do God's work.
If you how would I put it? In terms of like the structure of a church and how it redistributes its money, like, do you think the pastor should get a certain amount and then everything else just ends up, going back into programs and because to me it's like like an apex, like a triangle, and the pastor's at the top of the triangle.
Yeah.
And the people on the bottom, they're the ones that are funding everything. Like, I think whatever the pastor earns should be capped. Should be capped at a certain amount. Obviously, he gets his 50, 60 grand, whatever the money might be, 100,000, whatever. And then all that excess, which is just monstrous amounts of money, just gets redistributed into programs, into like community programs, helping homeless, whatever it might be, mission trips, whatever.
I agree with you. I think pastors, they should be paid well because they are leading a big, a congregation of people, but it should be capped. They shouldn't be able to make millions and millions and millions. There are lots of church organisations like the Baptist Union, Uniting Church of Australia, which is the third largest denomination in Australia, Catholic Church, the priests, Anglican priests, they all do have a capped, Salvation Army, the pastors and the leaders do have a capped salary. It's a standard. Usually it's about the same pay as a high school teacher. It's usually on the same level. They use a high school teacher or lecturer as a standard of going. But where you get these pastors making lots and lots of money is usually in large non-denominational churches. They claim to be non-denominational so they can do their own thing. They can make their own money. They can govern themselves. So they're non-denominational, but their theology, they're usually
more charismatic
or Pentecostal.
Uh-huh.
But they claim when they claim to the government what they are, they claim to be non-denominational, and that way they get away with making as much money as they want because they don't belong to any union, church union.
Do you think churches should be paying tax?
I think they should. They should pay
Yeah.
tax, just like, especially if a church runs themselves like an organization and they make a lot of money. I think they should pay tax. Churches argue that they shouldn't pay tax because they contribute a lot to society, to the community. They offer counseling, they offer help to homeless people. So they argue they shouldn't be taxed because they offer so much services to the community. But there are lots of churches that don't do much at all. They just have services on the weekends, and then that's it. They don't really offer much else. And
Yeah.
and often churches like Hillsong that offer a lot of, they say they offer a lot of things. It's within their own church. They offer music classes. They offer Bible school, classes, things like that, which isn't really appealing to the broader community. Is it really helping the broader community? Those sort of in-house, in-church services.
Yeah.
I would say the Salvation Army is a good church as a model in their structure, because you can clearly see the money they have. You can clearly see it's used to benefit the community. It's used to help the homeless.
That's another thing too. You never know how much. There's no transparency in terms of what was taken and where the money went. I've always found.
That's right.
You never know. You never know. Where where you're at. It's just like this never-ending money pit. You got to keep chucking more money in.
Yep. Years ago, it depends on the church. If I often go to a uniting church, and they have an offering, and the buckets go around, you just put whatever you want in the offering. But if I went to a big church like Hillsong, they often have a big thing about give as much as you can, it's for the work of God. There's always a big push for you to put money in the offering. So it depends on the church. Some churches, they're really money driven, and they always pound, give money to the offering and you'll get blessed in return. And then other churches, they often don't even mention money at all. It's not part of their theology. It's not part of their structure.
One thing I want to take you back to is something that you said before, so just to change pace a little bit, regarding the message that we get every Sunday, or I'm just talking generally. I'm just, this is not specific to Hillsong. Like, it could be just different places, whatever. Just experience I've had over the last, 20-something years. The messages, to me, always seem watered down, right? But I think on the flip side too, if they said too much stuff about the Bible in terms of current events, like they started preaching the book of Revelation, for example, could you imagine how much of a disturbance that would be in the public? Like how much you would have that much radicalized Christians who want to fight the government, kind of like what you got now with the the V issue at the moment. Not going to say the word, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And it's not, yeah. So I can see that there's a little bit of an uprising in that regard, because people are going to look at current events and say, oh, the world is going to end soon and blah, blah, we have to do all this, and Daniel Andrews is the Antichrist or whatever they're going to come up with, right? I guess maybe that's the counter. That's probably where they sort of keep them in that spot where the message is there to kind of watered down, kind of user friendly, doesn't scare off new people who want to come in, but we don't go too hardcore, because if we start telling you about stuff that we really believe in, because let's be honest, at the end of the day, pretty much every Christian, you come across the book of Revelation, and that's part of what you believe in, isn't it? Like, you believe that someone is going to round you up and try and put a mark in your right hand or in your forehead, and if you don't do that, then you're going to get get your head chopped off, or
the guillotine,
guillotined, or Trump's the Antichrist, or whatever they're going to come up with, right? So that's a sort of safe balance. So maybe they get the 501c3 because it's sort of the money that comes in is used possibly for community projects, but maybe not all of it is. Maybe like a portion is, and they've taken advantage of that.
Well, sometimes when the government asks big churches, show us where your money is distributed, a lot of churches struggle to show the government where they use the money.
Really?
How much of the money did you use for the community, to help the community? And some churches are very good. They use a lot of their money that they get from the offerings and government assistance. Some churches are very good. They help the community, the homeless, all this shelter for homeless people. But other churches, they really struggle because they use the money for themselves. They use the money in the church building, making a really nice, comfortable auditorium with the latest, sound stage for the band, and so some churches do struggle showing where their money has gone because they haven't used much money to actually help the community. They use a lot of it for themselves in their own church building and their own congregation. And Hillsong has been in trouble over the years with money issues. The government asks, where's their money gone? And they do struggle to show how much they've used in the community to help needy people in the community. As churches get a tax exempt, if they show that they do help the community. They help the homeless, they help the poor, they help they offer services in the community. If they don't, then the government can start taxing them if they don't really prove that they've been doing services in the community. The church is full of money, and
it just seems like there's a lot of there's always like sneaky ways to get around stuff, and
But going back to what you were saying about the message, churches have to get a balance between good, thoughtful theology that interests people, and it's good, solid theology, and this watered down, happy clappy environment with really, not very good mature leadership, not very good theology, really watered down. They've got to get a balance in between somewhere. Like, I've found some churches with some really great theology and really thought-provoking. They talk about, hell, heaven, hell. Is Christ really the Son of God? Is hell really literal hell, or is it metaphoric? Or they have all these really interesting subjects, but the congregation is boring as hell. Like, it's really boring, and the average person that goes in that sort of a church is age 70 or 80 years old. There's no band, There's no music, but the theology is great. And then I go to a church where the music is great and the environment is great, and everyone is young and youthful, but the theology is crap. There's hardly any good theology, but they got really great atmosphere and music. There's no real balanced church in between.
Yeah.
So I end up going, because I'm more theologically driven, I end up going to these boring churches because I like the theology in the sermon. But I can fall asleep sometimes because there's no atmosphere, there's no music, there's no young people.
and get all the old grannies hitting on you saying the Lord told them that you're going to be the one and all this sort of stuff.
Well, you get a lot of grannies that offer you a cup of tea after the church and a biscuit. You want a teddy bear biscuit?
Come round to my place, I'll give you a biscuit, young man.
We can talk about the gospel. Do you knock on doors and have you preached the gospel? Church culture, it's an interesting topic. But it's good we're discussing it today in an unfiltered way.
Exactly. Raw, unedited. It's completely unedited. No second takes. This is it.
Yep.
Let it all hang out.
Mm.
All right. So to close in final thoughts, let's tie back into the Hillsong thing. So what can you say is I couldn't see a positive that came out of that story. You know, honestly, when we looked at the victims there was one particular girl. She was like, I don't even know who these people are, but I'm just saying, like, one of them was particularly devastated and her demeanor was very withdrawn, very damaged, very hurt. And you just feel your heart goes out to them. And the way that she describes what happens, and it's just like you can tell that she was saving herself for marriage, and for that to happen was she was violated, and she probably has all sorts of thoughts running through her mind, like I'm a broken vessel now. No guy would want me. I was supposed to give someone on my wedding day this gift of myself, whatever, and that's I can't give him that anymore. And so now there's like self-worth, possible issues, self-esteem issues, trust issues around men. You name it, it's possibly traumatic. There, and it's unbelievably traumatic. And this is the other part too that I completely forgot all about this. Like, you know, we talk about when you're in the group, but what about when you're out of the group? That's the other part of it too. And that's not because you've done something bad. Like, there can be people in these churches that see how it's run and they're disgusted with how the whole thing is, and they might have friends there for 10, 20 years, whatever.
Yep.
And because they decide they don't want to have anything to do with this cult-like group, let's call it for what it is, it's a cult, because they put these guys on the pedestal, they become looked at like, oh, you know, you guys aren't part of us, you've changed theology, you've got brainwashed, you're backsliding, enter judgment, enter all that. And that's happened to me in my life when I was younger. We left and a certain place, and no one reaches out to you, and you feel like, I'm the victim here. I'm the one that's been hurt. What's the deal? Like, why am I treated like this? I felt like her friendship sort of had a meaning to them or something, but now obviously I don't believe that they don't mean anything. It was just there for a good time and a short time, and bang, in and out kind of thing. And it's very rare that you even have contact with people afterwards.
Yeah. And it happens a lot.
Have you ever had that happen to you before? Like when you've been involved in church and you've had to leave, or you decided to leave for whatever reason, and the friendships or whatever you made, they didn't continue on? Like people sort of, you can relate?
I think there's a thing within churches where they create their own little groups, and they're very clingy. And if you start expressing different opinions or something different to what the rest of the group believes, then they can start pushing you away. You mean
like they're really cliquey? You mean, yeah?
Yeah, very cliquey.
And there's always like some guy, like there's always one dude or someone who comes up and go, oh, I read the Bible and it says this, and you guys aren't preaching it that way. And then they go to the pastor, and the pastor's like, oh man, what are you talking about? Like, go away, you're mad. Like, you lost the plot.
Yep.
And that guy ends up becoming the wild man of the congregation, and then before long that guy's basically excommunicated or shunned because I don't know, either they're like a problem or they're too vocal or they could be seen as trying to get into people's ears or whatever.
Christians are very clingy people. Christians are also very opinionated, and you could be a part of a group, and if you start sharing a different opinion or a different idea and that group doesn't agree with you, they will be quick to kick you out or to make you feel you're not welcomed anymore. Happens a lot.
Yeah.
I've felt it because I started sharing different opinions, a different understanding of my faith, of God and Christianity, and they didn't like that because it was a different opinion to the mainstream view of the church. So little by little, they started pushing me away. They saw me as, oh, he's not a true Christian. Oh, be careful with that guy, But that's exactly it. The church is meant to be a place where you feel safe, where you journey and move towards Christ, and you're supposed to be renewed and strengthened in your faith in the church. It's meant to be a safe place. Like these women in Hillsong, could you imagine what they've gone through? They thought they were safe in church. They were happy in church, growing in the faith, growing in God, and then this happens to them. They get molested, and if you can't trust the church and you can't trust the church people, then who can you trust? It's that sort of a feeling. I'm surprised these two girls, are still Christian as far as I know, because I know a lot of people when the church or Christians have, I know a lot of Christians when they've had a bad experience from other Christians, it's enough for them to fall away and to give up their whole faith altogether. It can be a very daunting thing to be attacked in a place or by people that you thought you would have been safe. You're supposed to feel safe amongst Christians. You're supposed to feel safe in the church. But if you've been pushed away or molested or attacked or assaulted, that's enough for some people to give up their whole faith altogether.
Yeah, that's true.
The church is meant to be a place where people feel safe and people grow, learn about Christ, and grow to be like Christ. And if that doesn't happen in the church, there's something really wrong in the church if that's not happening. If the opposite is happening, if people are being assaulted in the church, feeling attacked, feeling bad, feeling assaulted in the church, then there's something very, very wrong about that, because that's not what the church is meant to be.
That's right. Very true.
Churches, there will always be problems. Churches are institutions and they're not perfect. And we live in a broken world. So there'll always be, there's no perfect church. There's no one church which has it all correct and perfect, and there's no
one church to rule them all.
There's no one church that's perfect, that rules them all.
That's right.
But I think churches have to be careful, especially big churches. And we're supposed to be the light of the world, and supposed to be portraying a standard to the world, a good standard of loving and caring for one another, and that's what the church should be aiming for. It's just sad that many churches, many Christians are not doing that, not showing that light. They're doing the opposite. They're becoming the problem. They're becoming part of the problem, causing grief and sorrow to people instead of bringing light and strength to people, and love to people. They're bringing problem and horror to people. It's just very sad.
and it just blows my mind. Like an act or fair enough. Oh, maybe fair enough, but okay. Sometimes in life we say the wrong thing. That's a spontaneous thing. But when it's an act is premeditated or planned, that's beyond. What do you even say to that? Like, that's a heart problem. You've got a heart problem. You're rotten inside.
Well, if it's a Christian that is doing that, if a Christian is acting in a way that is harming others, then you got to ask the question: are they really a Christian? And yeah, definitely they have issues that must be solved. They've got something wrong with them. A Christian should not be bringing harm to other people. A Christian should be bringing comfort and joy and strength and love and care to people, not harm, not causing harm and grief to people. So if there's any so-called Christians that are harming others, then they definitely have to step back and have a hard look at themselves and see what the real meaning of being a Christian is. Being a Christian is you've got to be born again to be a Christian, born into a new body, into a new person, a Christ-like person. If you're going around harming others, I don't think you're really born again. You're not a Christ-like person at all.
Yeah. So that makes me think: do these people lose their way along the way, or do they never had that experience, or is the born again experience that's just something that we call it? Like, I'm trying to say, like.
It's kind of like a slang term these days. Oh, I'm a born-again Christian, It's kind of, in a way, it's kind of lost the real depth of the meaning these days. It's just a tag name, I'm a born-again Christian, It's kind of lost the strength of the meaning of it. The core of the Christian faith is about being born again. It's about being renewed into new people. We're no longer worldly people, but we're new people in Christ. We don't do worldly things anymore. We aim to make the world a better place. We aim to love our neighbors. We aim to do good for ourselves and for the world. That's the whole meaning of being born again. You're a new person. But yeah, these days it's kind of like a tag. Oh, I'm a born-again Christian, I know many people that call themselves a born-again Christian, but I question, are they really born again? The way they talk and act is not like they're born again at all. It's not like they're a real follower of Christ. They're as worldly as anything,
But then again, on the same other side, not to justify anything, but some people that I've met in my life, they might be rough people and they might swear, but they're the nicest people in the whole world, and they'll give you the shirt off their back too.
Yeah.
So to me, it's not so much what's on the outside; it's what's on the inside that really matters, right?
Exactly.
And if they're just
that's what born again means.
Yeah.
You change from the inside out.
But that's like their intent. Their intent is still bad. It still seeks to do evil, to gain upon other people, to prey on other people's weaknesses.
There's definitely
all that sort of stuff.
There is definitely people out there that are pure evil or just really bad people. I don't like the term evil, but there are people that are just really bad. And
I think it's legit.
Bad intentions.
Fair's enough. Fair enough. Fair's fair.
Well, okay, fair is fair. There are real evil people out there. But if there's one right there. if
Right.
if you're part of the church and you call yourself a Christian and you're a church leader, you shouldn't be doing these things, especially if you're a Christian, especially if you're a church leader. You shouldn't be harming other people with your actions. You should be aiming to live a born-again life as though you're born again. Now, it's not like when we're born again, it's not like we're instantly changed like that. We do have an instantly moment of change, but it's also a gradual change. We get better and better as we journey in our faith. We're not perfect overnight. We aim for being holy. We aim for being like Christ, and it's a journey of faith. And the Gospels actually says, you'll know them by their fruits. If you have good fruit or bad fruit, Christians are meant to be fruitful, showing good fruits. So if you're a Christian in a church and you're going around harming others, your fruit is rotten. You're not growing. You're not growing in Christ. Your fruit is rotten. You're hiding in the church doing these bad, evil things. And what makes it sad is if the church knows about it, they cover it up. They put a blind eye to it and dust it under the rug, like nothing's happened.
Sure.
And that's part of the problem with Hillsong. They've got allegations that Hillsong knew about these things, and yet they just covered it up. They just put a blind eye to these allegations. And it's happened.
I guess you got to take every scenario. You got to take every scenario on its merits, but there's so many people that need to have been kicked out or demoted or whatever. Because if you want to go back to saying it's like a business, these people represent the business. Yep. You want to go back and call that. If you've got bad employees in your business, they represent you. So you don't want them around. Or just demote them, or I don't know how far you go. Because you can go the extreme and you can make them stand in front of 2,000 people on a Sunday and make them tell everyone what they did and just make them look, where are we? That big, and that's not good either, because then you're going to do a lot of damage to their reputation. I guess maybe they deserve it. I don't know, man. I don't know what the exact answer is, but how would you do it? Say you're pastor of a church and you've got a person that's done something. And they're a popular person in the place. What do you do?
I will go out of my way to thoroughly investigate what has happened. I will talk to the victim. I will do my best to comfort the victim. Pray with them, see what really happened, see what they need, if they need anything, if they need more comforting, more prayer, more support. Because being assaulted in any place, not just in church, but being assaulted in general is a horrific ordeal for anyone, for a man or a woman. And so if it happens in a church and I'm a church leader, I would thoroughly investigate it. I would try to make the victim, give the victim some sort of comfort that I'm investigating what happened. And then I would go to the alleged assaulter and I would talk to them. And if it was a genuine misuse of leadership or misuse of that person's position, I would straight away get rid of them, fire them, kick them out of the church. There's no place in the body of Christ for acting bad, for assaulting people. It is not, if there's any bad fruit in the body of Christ, it should be rooted out. The Bible even says that. Otherwise, it will keep growing like a disease and spread throughout the whole church. So if I was a church leader, I would definitely get on top of it straight away and get rid of the person. If if I find that person really did do and show harm to someone else, I will get rid of them straight away.
I agree. Jay, what are your final thoughts on tonight's subject?
Well,
I think I said that to you about half an hour ago, but I'll say it again.
Well, it's a big topic, and that's why we keep. We had a lot to say tonight.
We did.
I would say if anyone's out there that has been let down or felt assaulted in church or assaulted by Christians, I would say don't give up your faith. Don't walk away from your faith. But have strength in God. Reflect on what happened. Pray to God. Try to get strength from God. Don't lose your faith. But I would say hopefully churches, because it's happened so often and happening a lot these days, allegations popping up of assaults, sexual assaults, and these sort of things in the church, I would hope that the church, the whole church in general, not just Protestant or Pentecostal or Catholic churches, but the whole church community worldwide, I hope this is sort of a wake-up call for churches to pull their socks up and start acting more like Christ, start being more Christ-like and start, stopping these sort of things from happening within the church. It seems to be happening a lot, and I hope over the next decade or so we get a lot less of these things happening, and the church grows more to be like Christ, not growing in numbers, but growing in love, growing in attitude, growing
100%.
in fruit, being more fruitful in our actions, in our relationship with Christ. I just hope the church heads in a better direction to where we are now.
Yeah. All right. Beautiful. Well, thank you very much for everyone who's taken the time to watch our video tonight. We just want to say like and subscribe to our channel. We've got so much more content to come. Hopefully we'll get a video at least one a week out. And thank you so much. Take care. Have a good night.
Good night.